Welcome back to Tips Over Tea. This is episode 9. I had a great chat with Lee today about communications. You can imagine how important communication is from a wellness perspective. Reducing stress and anxiety is such a key thing. So make sure you grab your tea, sit back, and listen to some tips. Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 9 of Tips Over Tea. I'm so glad you're with us. I am excited to talk to Lee today, Lee of Lee Comerford Consulting. Lee, I get right into it because 30 minutes goes by so quickly. So what I love about your expertise, the communication piece of it, and just because the way it with wellness, with respect to wellness, if you can't clearly communicate your truth, it can really break down relationships, and that can be really stressful and frustrating. So tell me more about what you do for people, organizations. How does that help? What have you seen, like transformation wise and stuff like that?
Yeah, no, I appreciate the question. And thank you for inviting me to join you today. I'm
You're
thrilled to be
welcome.
here.
You're welcome.
And communication means so many different things. You
Mhm.
hear someone say, I need communications training. And it's like, well, what part? And the part that I really want to focus on today is all about understanding yourself
Mm,
and relating to cognitive diversity. So we
mm,
hear diversity all the time. I want to focus conversation now on our cognitive diversity. So how are we thinking, and
mhm.
how is our thinking different than someone else that we might be communicating with? And I work with, yeah,
Okay.
it's so true, right?
Yeah.
So I work with a model that really allows each individual to learn more about their own thinking styles.
Mhm,
And once we know this about ourselves, it goes back to everything. Self-awareness is key to your
mhm,
success.
mhm.
But once we understand our own thinking styles, we're able to better communicate, build relationships, have team synergy, because we know how to converse with someone
Mhm,
else. We
mhm,
might need to adapt to their thinking style so that
mhm,
we can communicate better.
mhm,
Or in presentations, all of that is communication.
mhm.
So this thinking style, it's the Hbdi, Hermann
Okay.
Dominance Instrument, designed by Hermann International and Ned Hermann back in the 70s when he was employed at GE. So it is a business tool that was designed in business. And
Mhm,
it is all about how are we going to help others learn more about themselves, learn more about communicating with other people, and ultimately building that bridge between the two for, as you said, wellness.
mhm. I love that because we've all had conversations where we'd say something and the person responds in an unexpected way, and we're like, where did that come from? That's not what I said, or I thought that's not what I said. But I know how we all have our own filters too. Like when we respond to things, it's usually just from how, our own perspective and perceptions and things we've learned and all that. So miscommunication can happen so inadvertently easily.
Absolutely. We find that our brains like to just naturally stay in their ruts, our
Hmm.
common way of doing things, our common way of thinking.
Hmm.
And so by having this self-awareness, it allows you to pause and think, and therefore allow yourself to come out of that rut in order to have that appropriate communication with someone else.
Yeah. Can you think of a time where, I guess a couple of questions just came to mind, where you've had to employ that on a personal level, but just with family, friends, because they may have different communication styles or thinking styles?
Absolutely, absolutely. So I'll actually take it to a business opportunity. This one is just jumping right into my
Yeah,
mind.
yeah.
So a manager that I reported to years ago, and I walked in his office. I had only been on board about 60 days, and I walked in for a one-on-one, and I was all excited to share all of the successes
Hmm.
in my role. And this guy, amazing leader, but he had never had anyone like me report to him, doing the job that I was doing. So he
Hmm.
knew nothing. So I'm trying to explain, and I'm realizing that he's just not engaged with me at all. He's
Hmm.
hearing it, but he's not with me.
Hmm.
And so after the meeting, I walked out and I'm like, all right, this was all super exciting. Why was he not with me? And I started asking some questions of others on the expanded team. And they said, well, he's a total data guy. I'm like, aha, thank you. So when I was sharing with him, it was trying to connect personally. It was going through my checklist. But with him being a data person, I needed to approach things very differently. So I opted to create a report that had charts and graphs and numbers and all of these things that would speak to him. And I sent that ahead of our meeting and asked him to review it and that we would talk through it when I got there. And I walked in the door and I asked if he had had a chance to read the report. And he said, oh my gosh, yes. And the floodgates opened. He started asking all of these questions. And I was like, yay, I got it. But it was because of that learning that that I was just not speaking to him in his language. So I was speaking in two of the quadrants. So this is a 4-quadrant model. I was speaking in 2 of the quadrants, but they were not his quadrant.
Yeah, that's interesting. And just that elation, well, for one, I think is pretty cool. Were you working in communications at that time too, or did you just kind of intuitively?
Yeah, well, I was in a learning and development position, and this manager that I had was, I mean, it should have been obvious. He was head of comp for the organization. But in our general conversation, when we'd bump into each other in the hallway, or when I was initially hired, there seemed to be that ability for that relational connection. So I just sort of went with that, not realizing the importance of understanding how somebody else thinks and how I need to be meeting them where they are, not where I am.
I can imagine like ego could get in the way of that too.
Yes. It's like, why do I have to change for somebody else?
Yeah.
Yeah. It goes back to to the wellness side of it. And if you want to remain well, it is that ability to shift and meet others in the middle. If it's all about us, we might be well, but nobody around us will be well. And ultimately, we will not be well.
Yeah. Yeah, because energy is transferable. So awesome. I've had conversations. Well, actually, tell me more about each quadrant, because I noticed you mentioned relational and data driven. So tell me, can I hear more about that?
Yeah, I'd love to share. So 4-quadrant model, there are colors involved. So we'll start with the blue quadrant. And the blue is that logical, factual, number oriented. If you know people who love to live in Excel spreadsheets, they likely have a preferred dominance in this blue quadrant. So the intellectual, if you will. And then if we move down into the green quadrant, this is all about the checklists, structure, step-by-step processes. So folks in compliance are likely really happy in the green quadrant. Those of us who walk around with our notepads and all of these things listed on it and we check things off, these are folks who have a high dominance preference in that quadrant. And then in the red, it is all about your feeling or emotional self. So this is the talker, the person who just likes to talk to talk. They're usually the ones who are always making sure that introductions have been made and that they're pulling people along with them, inviting people along. And then the final quadrant is the yellow quadrant. And this is all about your holistic thinker, your big picture thinker, the one who is who loves to brainstorm, to ideate. So this is the yellow quadrant. And it's not that you're only dominant in one quadrant. You can be in more than one. But there is always one that is higher, and that is your most preferred and where you show up the most. And if you are a super high dominant, so we've got there's a preference code. A 1 is a high preference, a 2 is a medium preference, and a 3, a tertiary, is a low preference. If you have a low preference in one of the quadrants, it means you're not comfortable at all, and you likely will be staying away as much as you can from that quadrant. But for those who are a high 1, this is so there's scores involved as well. So if you're above a 90, not only do you know that about yourself, but likely those around you realize that about you too. So kind of going back to the checklists. is, something that anybody who knows me or has worked with knows that is something that, you can't miss that one. Yeah. So I also love props. So just to share, this is a quick
Yeah,
version of the model, the
I
whole
love
brain
it.
model. And we just talked about all four of those quadrants. So starting with the blue, the green, the red, and then the yellow.
I love it. I hope anybody who watches or catches the replay can kind of identify themselves somewhere in that and kind of just like learn more. Of course, they can also contact you to learn more about that.
Yes,
um,
absolutely.
and I can imagine just like when you have, and like you were talking about presentations, if you know you have a room of different quadrants, like how do you tailor speaking to them in a way that everybody can receive the valuable information that you have to present? How do you teach people to kind of do that? How do you make sure you're doing that when, especially if one of your preferences is like holistic and you got to talk to the data people, which is very intricate, like details and stuff like that. So how do you do that?
That's a great question and one that comes up a lot. So it is that being aware of your own preference and
Mhm,
realizing what might you be holding back, what might it's a bias.
mhm,
So what are you not doing for someone else that you could be?
mhm,
So for instance, I've got a certification in this tool coming up
mhm,
this week where I'll be certifying other people. And that's one of the things that we really stress is
mhm,
how does your preference interfere with how you debrief other people?
mhm,
Do you stay just in your preferred quadrant or do you truly open it up?
mhm,
So when it comes to presentations, when it comes to meetings, how
mhm,
are you organizing either of those so that you are incorporating all four of the quadrants?
mhm.
So, for instance, let's start with a meeting, if that's all right with you.
Sure.
So designating so much time according to the quadrants. So, for instance, if you're going into a planning meeting, making
Mhm,
sure that you have dedicated time for brainstorming. That's
mhm,
going to be your yellow quadrant,
mhm,
and having everyone have an opportunity just to share openly.
mhm.
So nothing's off the table. It's just brainstorm time,
Yeah.
and then inviting everyone to contribute and making sure that someone isn't kind of sitting on the sidelines. That's going to be your red quadrant.
Mhm.
Your green moves into the, okay, how might we begin to get this done? The green is also your agenda for the meeting. But how are we going to get it done? Who's assigned to what?
Mhm.
And the blue quadrant is what data are we going to need? What research is going to need to be done in order to get there?
That's
Then
good.
coming back into the green quadrant to
Yeah.
assign those tasks to different people so that you can check them off and move through your project planning.
I can see how that could create a cohesive team environment.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Playing to your strengths.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Um, Also, what comes to mind too, when we kind of going back and we were talking about that can your ego can kind of get in the way because you want to speak in what your preference is. But if you think about it too, like what result do you actually want from that conversation? Do you want to just be the ego and voice your opinion, or do you want to get a specific result? Because that's going to require, meeting people in the middle. So, I mean, that home life as well, like
That's such a true comment. I mean, if you go into it with just self in mind,
Mhm, mhm.
you can be prepared to leave with just self in mind. It's a simple approach.
Mhm.
Um, Not to forget your request about the presentation.
Yeah,
If you're presenting data or presenting information to anyone, it's how do you incorporate elements from each of those four quadrants?
yeah.
So the blue, obviously, some charts,
Mhm,
some graphs, numbers.
mhm,
Where did you do your research? Having that documented. The green, having it very structured, having an agenda with your objectives at the beginning,
mhm.
letting those folks who need to understand what's coming next, they know they've already been shown what that agenda is going to look like. The yellow is incorporating pictures and not having too much word, data,
Mhm,
text
mhm,
on your presentation slide,
mhm,
because if folks are more visually um, pulled in,
Yeah.
or interested, if they're just seeing text everywhere, you've lost them. So, yeah, exactly.
Guilty.
So incorporating a little bit of text, a picture,
Mm-hmm.
and then having folks relate to that picture and the question or the short text that you have on the slide, and then
Mm-hmm.
truly just speaking to it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I love it.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. How, I was thinking like even just because I know your specialty is work life. How have you used this model in with friends and or family, just personally? Do you, because I imagine like if you know people, you kind of know what their tendencies are. So how do you well, one, how do you use it? And then two, how do you not like say, hey, this is me, this is how you should talk? Like, you know what I mean? Like when people go on like a weight loss journey and they learn all this stuff about food and they try to make everybody do all the food changes that they're doing. So how do you finesse that in a way that it wouldn't drive people crazy and run them away?
I I try to approach when I realize that I'm, meeting up with a friend who's just super relational. I'll
Mhm,
let her know, hey, I really need to talk through a process for a minute.
mhm,
Can you help me
mhm,
with that? So I present what I'm
mhm,
looking for help with and just say, I'm so excited to catch up and we'll do that in just a minute, but I really need
mhm,
something first. Or if I see that someone is very data
mhm,
conscious, then we'll talk about that and I'll ask them, okay, what are you looking to achieve with this? What are you
mhm,
trying to do?
mhm,
And they'll typically talk through the story and I'm like, great, how are you going to bring other people along in that?
mhm, mhm,
So even if it's personal, you're still bringing in other relationships.
mhm,
So I'm
mhm.
I'm still kind of speaking from the work
I
concept,
know.
but all of that is still in personal
Applicable.
too.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, because we spend a lot of our time with our coworkers if we're so
Do. We do. But it's being aware of how you want to maybe naturally stretch.
yeah.
So for instance, yellow has gotten stronger for me over the years. But
Mhm.
if I was looking to partner with someone to really stretch my yellow, I'd reach out to you and I'd say, Nikki, I've got a project. I need some help with big
Mhm,
picture because I'm going to just go straight to wanting to get it done.
mhm, mhm,
So can we spend an hour together and let's just talk big
mhm.
picture and let's work on this and have you bring in your creativity in order to be successful with
I love that.
whatever it is.
I love that. That's so important because I say we're meant to be interconnected, interrelational. We can't do everything ourselves. And to know that you have people in your corner that can support you in areas that are not your strong point. Heck, that's a form of wellness too, because you don't have to stress over like that is so not me. It's like pulling, I don't want to, like me, there's the inventory of my products. I just want to pull my eyes out. I am not that person. It drives me crazy. So I love the fact that you can have that type of awareness about yourself, so that you can know where you can to just get some help in other areas instead of trying to figure all this stuff out by yourself, because that's stressful. Yeah,
I also keep yellow post-it notes.
I love that.
And when I realize that I'm needing to do something or focus on something that is not in my primary quadrant,
Hmm.
I'll put yellow post-it notes with comments on it and post them all over. Now I also have red and blue and green. So it's helping yourself remember, ooh, this isn't where I naturally like to be. Therefore, I can stretch there. I know I can go into that quadrant. It's just going
Yeah,
to take more energy. So
yeah.
when am I going to allow for that to happen in my day?
Hmm.
I know for me, I have more energy in the morning. So
Hmm.
if I've got a lot of ideating to do, I make sure that I block that time in the morning because if it's after 2 or 3 in the afternoon, it's just not going to be happening well, and I'm really going to be exhausted.
Yeah.
So, it goes back to it's just something that popped in my head. It's like,
Hmm.
well, okay, well, you say that a primary dominance in one area, um, it's natural, but what if you end up with a secondary?
Hmm.
If you actually take the assessment and it says you're a secondary in that quadrant,
Hmm.
again, this particular assessment has nothing to do with skill or competency.
Yeah.
It's thinking.
Reference. Yeah.
It's what comes first.
I like
So
that you mentioned that whole planning of your day part, which makes sense because you're structured. But just knowing yourself enough to know, like, if you have to do some ideation, do it first thing in the morning, and reminding yourself that that's not one of your main preferences, because sometimes you can beat yourself up, like, why can't I just do this? Why is this so freaking difficult? You're like, you like, I should be able to do this. It's a simple task, but the task could be simple, but it could just be not one of your favorite things to do, and it makes it seem difficult, so reminding yourself, of your preferences and things, I think that's key too, for not beating yourself up.
right, and planning your tasks for the day
Mm-hmm.
based on energy level. It's
Mm-hmm.
the same thing in our home lives.
Yeah.
You've got laundry to do. You may, somebody may need to go cut the grass.
Mm-hmm.
Go clean the, whatever.
Yeah.
These are things that you don't naturally enjoy. When do
Mm-hmm.
you have most energy in your day
Yeah.
that you can plan to do that, so that you just
Mm-hmm.
knock it out and then you can get to the things that you love to do?
In the mornings. But that's called adulting, because I'm like, I have all this energy and I want to do something I enjoy. So you got to adult.
You do. You do. It goes back to accountability and responsibility, doesn't it?
It does. I would have to tell somebody, so this is what I plan on getting done, because I sometimes I will get distracted doing other things. I will tell you what. And then I'm trying to do the dishes before I go to work, and then I'm running late. Is it yellow?
It's amazing. All of us have that distraction
Yeah.
capability. Call it
Yeah.
squirrel, right?
Yeah.
Ooh, what new squirrel or what shiny object has just
Mhm.
presented itself that now has you completely sidetracked?
Mhm. And that's
Many of us suffer.
interesting. Yeah. At least we know we're human.
Yes. Always striving for learning more. Yes.
Yes, yes. And that's key. Like, just knowing that you're ever evolving. Don't get mad at what you didn't know a few minutes ago. You know it now. Now you can walk in it, those little things. I'm hoping that some of these tips that you've shared are just going to help folks really, really think and do some introspective work on themselves. Is the assessment a paid assessment, or is it free, or how does that work?
There is a fee associated
Mhm.
with it,
Mhm.
and it does include a debrief, so a
Mhm.
one-on-one opportunity to learn more about yourself. If you just get the report, it doesn't really help you. So
Mhm.
having a certified practitioner walk through that with you
Mhm.
is certainly the way to go. So if anyone is interested in that, please
Mhm.
reach out to me on my website,
Yeah.
just leecomerford.com, and I am happy to have a conversation with you first. Make sure that it's something that will meet your objectives and what you're hoping to achieve, and then we'll get the assessment assigned to you.
I love that. I used to be. I still am. I love taking assessments, but I also try to make sure I take it, as an informative tool, as opposed to this is who I am. You know what I mean? Like, we can get so stuck and say, I am this quadrant, so it's hard to bend in any other direction. So I think it's definitely important. I like the fact that you make sure that people know it doesn't mean, you can stretch and all that. So keeping it open, not rigid.
And that's one thing about this tool that's so critically important is we focus on reminding everyone, don't pigeonhole yourself or someone else into a single quadrant. We are all whole brained. We are whole brain. So this is the whole brain model. And simply by having that awareness, it really goes back to energy.
Yeah.
How are we utilizing our energy to be more effective in some of these quadrants that we have a lesser preference?
I love that. That is that is a big thing. When I talk to clients about, like, energy at the end of the day, I'm like, if you're tired and you haven't really done anything physically, it's probably a whole lot of mental energy that you've expended and may or may not have needed to. So I like to review that with them. Kitty cat, sorry.
Yeah,
See, that's my
sorry.
squirrels. Animals are my squirrels.
They're roaming the house.
But yeah,
That's
so
Aaron.
energy. But yeah, energy is a big thing, because at the end of the day, whether you've teleworked or actually went out and came back home from work, you kind of want to be able to still enjoy your life. Like, you know what I mean? Like, do life stuff, cook dinner, just maybe work out if you're an evening workout person, just spend time with family, spend time with friends, or, just different things. And if you don't have the energy, like, it's like, why do I keep doing this to myself?
And I think when those things are starting to happen, other questions begin to come into play.
Yeah.
Am I spending my time where I should be? And evaluating is, in your situation, the example you just had with work, am I in a position that's meeting my values? Am I in a position that's meeting what I want in life?
Yeah.
We don't always have the ability to say, well, no, it isn't, and I'm making a change.
Yeah.
but we can talk through that and understand what needs to come next.
Yeah.
And help with determining, do you want the next, or will you find contentment where you are?
Yeah. Yeah. I've had those conversations with clients, and I like that we brought this up, because what I've seen too is that some people don't do that evaluation. They just complain about how the day went. So, not knocking the complainers, but I hope if you tend to be that way, that I hope this kind of sparks like, oh, because so for me, long time, I didn't realize until I started doing personal development that I didn't have to stay stuck where I was mentally and emotionally, right? And so some people, that's why I don't knock it, like some people don't realize that there are just some small changes that they can do that can give them so much more energy. And one of the things is knowing, that's a big thing, knowing about themselves, being aware of what could be draining them and stuff like that. So to that point, I hope if you have a tendency to be discontent, that you think about the fact that you have the ability to shift some things and make some changes.
Absolutely. Actually, achieve your potential.
Yeah, absolutely. What are we at? 4 minutes. See, I told you it goes by so quick.
It does go by fast. Yeah.
Do you have any last things that you'd like to share, tips or anything? I'd love to share it with everyone.
Yeah, I think I've dropped quite a few already, but it's really, the taking the time to learn about yourself. I've shared enough today that you should be able to pick up on some of your own natural tendencies to realize where your preferred quadrant or quadrants are, and also to identify where your lesser preferred quadrants are. So making that commitment to awareness of, how might I shift? What is it? Is it a colored Post-it note that reminds you to shift into one of those other quadrants? Is it just a handwritten note that you put somewhere? Is it a reminder in your calendar? What is it that you can do for yourself to help you in your day-to-day, and in conversations with other people, picking up on some of those clues that we talked about, those characteristics of each of the four quadrants. And if you're not communicating with them in their preferred quadrant, shifting, because there's always a highest preferred, and that's what you're likely going to be hearing most from folks. Now, there might start to be a combination, which gets really fun, because you realize, ooh, I can do more than just focus in one quadrant. But it's by picking up on those clues that you'll find that you can start being more effective with others. And if you truly want to get down to the nitty gritty and really learn for yourself, that's when you can reach out to me and we can have a conversation.
Yeah. And I wanted to say too, something just came to mind. If you're talking to someone who's just aware of themselves as you are of yours, I can imagine that could be fun too, because you both are meeting in the middle. If you're in two different quadrants, if you're in the same quadrants, you probably will never shut up. But
well, not necessarily.
Not
and
really?
I'm really glad you brought that up.
Oh, good.
There's clusters in each of these quadrants as well.
Okay.
So just because you or I might have, and I'll use your preferred right now, yellow. If you and I both had a primary dominance in yellow, the characteristics that we chose in that quadrant could be very different.
Oh, that's so interesting.
So we might still clash, even though we both have a preference in that same quadrant.
I love that. That's so interesting. Of course, I bring this up at the end. We might have to just do a whole class or something.
Yeah, well, I think we should. So, so the last element is understanding who you are and how you show up from a thinking style naturally, can be very different than how you show up when you're under pressure or under stress. And this assessment allows you to understand and to see those two overlaid on top of each other. So for me, under normal circumstances, we've talked about where I naturally live. Under pressure, my red quadrant grows a lot.
Okay.
And it's because of that desire and need to make sure that I'm keeping relationships where they need to be, and that I'm bringing other people along. So my blue quadrant comes in a little bit, my yellow quadrant comes in a fair amount, my green gets higher, and my red gets higher.
Interesting.
So having that awareness as well is really important, because you can realize, oh, I think I'm living in an under stress state.
Yeah.
How do I shift that?
Yeah.
Because do I really want to live under stress or under pressure on a regular basis? How is that affecting other areas of my life and wellness?
Yeah. I can imagine that too, with having a conversation with a loved one. If you're having a heated conversation and you can recognize that, then you can pull back and, say, I need to step away for a minute while I gather myself, as opposed to keep going and making it worse. So I think that would be definitely a good thing to know.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Awareness.
Yeah, right?
Beautiful thing.
Word of the century. Yes. Awesome. Well, we are at time, and it has been a great conversation. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you caught this live, or if you will catch the replay, please feel free to reach out to Lee. She's got a lot of great information to share with you guys. If you're on my YouTube channel, please like, subscribe, share. I'm sure there are other people who could really use this information. And don't hesitate to put comments. We'll check them and respond. And until then, I will see you guys next week. And thanks again, Lee.
Thank you. Again, it was a pleasure. And I look forward to answering any questions. Thanks, everybody. Thanks. Take care. Bye.
Hey there. Make sure you subscribe, like, and click the bell so you could be notified every time I upload a new video. And thanks again for tuning in. I hope you got a lot of great nuggets. Don't forget to share it with someone who could use the same information. And we'll see you on the next Tips Over Tea.